Okay, so let's get started. Again, I'd like to welcome you all to today's session, which is on Azure Sentinel. It's been one of the most requested topics. We did have a session last month, and yet we received a lot of queries around Sentinel. So we thought we'll have a quick demo-based session today where we'll run through a few slides just to make sure everybody understands what the Azure Sentinel is, and then we'll go ahead and create a brand new Azure Sentinel it's an instance and look at the various options to configure it. Before I get started, a quick introduction about myself. My name is Roshan. I work with Ingram Micro, Australia as a solution architect. I'm based in Melbourne. My role as a solution architect is to help partners design and develop solutions on Microsoft Cloud. My background, I've been a Microsoft technology guy pretty much throughout my career. I started with SharePoint and SQL, then moved to BPOS and Office 365, and have been working on Azure since it was known as Windows Azure. Right? So it's been, I would say, about 10 years now. I've worked with Microsoft for several years. I've worked with several MSPs, Gold partners for a good amount of years. And now I've been working with Ingram. So I've worked with most of the channel market. And as always, if you have any questions on Microsoft Cloud or anything to do with Microsoft Azure in specific, feel free to get in touch with me on my email, or you can definitely drop an email to Ingram Micro Cloud team, and I'll be more than happy to take up your questions. In today's session, the chat is available to post your questions, so feel free to post your questions throughout the session. I'll review the questions towards the end of today's session and hopefully answer all of them. So before we begin the session, there are two acronyms that I would want to make everybody understand, because we'll be using these two terms quite frequently in today's session. The first one is SIEM, SIEM. It's Security Information Event Management. And the second one is SOAR, which is Security Orchestration and Automated Response. These are the two terms that we would be using a lot, very closely associated with Sentinel. So just setting that expectation and proceeding further. Now, as I'm sure most of you know, today's session is focused around security, right? And these days you would have seen, because of COVID, because of the holiday season, the amount of attacks on Australian businesses have been increasing, and these attacks have now become more and more sophisticated, more and more targeted. The attackers are now evolving. They spend time, money on getting to know the business and attack the business, so that the businesses, even before they realize they are under attack, they're already losing money. So the threats are increasing, the volume of threats are increasing, and they're becoming more and more sophisticated. Also, you cannot stop all attacks, right? Even, I mean, most of my partners have Microsoft 365 implemented, and I would say still partners or still end users get spam emails, right? They still get malwares, they still get attachments which are not recognized. So it's not about stopping all the attacks, but it is about making sure you have enough technology, enough tools at hand in order to detect them and respond them in time, right? You will see in the future that you will always have people trying to sniff your network, trying to do a brute force attack, or even sending out very sophisticated emails. But it is all about being able to detect, respond, and hopefully even prevent some of these attacks in the future. A lot of companies have several tools, right? You have companies that use SaaS-based CRM, yet they have an on-prem Active Directory which runs on 2008. You have customers still running on on-prem Exchange server, though it's strongly not recommended to. You have customers who are using third-party applications but are not patched, but are not updated. So having a strong integration with modern technology and legacy application is now becoming more and more expensive, more and more complicated. And this is one of the areas where attackers exploit a lot, especially when you do not have the latest patches and updates, and vendors release information about what is patched and updated in the hotfix. That is the timeline where a lot of enterprise companies get attacked by hackers, and these attacks are now becoming more and more brutal. And one of the challenges that the IT department faces is keeping up with the attacks and at the same time making sure the systems are updated as soon as there is a hotfix or a patch available by the vendor. So the slower you do this integration, the slower you patch and update your systems, your defense against these attacks are not as strong as you would like them to be. Last but not the least, you still need to have human intervention when it comes to analyzing attacks, right? Yes, automation definitely plays a very big role, especially when you have a lot of repetitive tasks. But at the end of the day, you still want to be able to combine automation and human ability to figure out what is the main cause for the security breach, or where did it happen, why did it happen. So a combination of human and automation, or human and machine learning, is becoming a challenge and a way forward for companies to implement that combination. So these are some of the observations that we have seen in today's world, and Microsoft as a vendor, as a company, is trying to evolve their products, trying to make sure they have all the integrations in place so that you don't have to buy products from different vendors. Most of the products or most of the solutions that are required to stop an attack is possible within the Microsoft ecosystem. That's what they're trying. So they have come out with a zero trust model where you explicitly verify, you have least privileges. So a quick slide about the core pillars of zero trust, and this is where we strive to enforce even our partners to implement these, right? So you have four main pillars. You have identity, which is now not just bound by your network, right? Your identity can be your on-prem Active Directory, can be your Azure Active Directory, it can be your Dropbox ID, can be your Salesforce ID. So your ID is no more bound to laptop being accessed within the corporate network. So having a very strong identity solution, managing and monitoring from where are users accessing, have there been multiple password resets, is a user logging in from a location which is not familiar. So these are things that you want to verify about the identity. The same holds true for device. Because of COVID, a lot of companies have offered remote work options. So now users are working from their home. They are using the same network to access their office softwares as well as their personal. A lot of times companies or employees actually use office machines to do their personal work. It can be as simple as checking their own emails to probably watching Netflix or doing other personal activities on official laptops. Now, these also tend to compromise the laptop. So you have to make sure that you have the right policies for your devices. You enforce updates and patches for devices which need to access corporate applications. You also want to make sure that users have enough permissions on the machines, but not admin permissions on the machines, right? So making sure, like identity, you have enough policies and regulations around device and around access. We are moving towards a cloud first world where pretty much every single application is now accessible over the internet, right? So it is very important that you are able to identify the level of access that a user has on each of these applications, the integration, especially when you do integrations across multiple applications, the access rights between the applications, the data transfer between the applications. These are things that you have to explicitly verify and make sure the users are not accessing data which they shouldn't be accessing. Last but not the least is verifying services, which is applications, right? Now, in all these four pillars, one of the most critical aspect is if there is an attack, how do you identify it, right? Whether it was an attack from an which came from identity or a device or from email or from an unpatched laptop. So it's very important to have a system which is able to look into all the devices, have a bird's eye view of everything that's happening in your corporate network, and at the same time have the intelligence to be able to refine through that immense IT logs or infrastructure logs and help your security team identify where is the issue, why is the issue coming up, how many users or devices or applications are affected by it, and then help them remediate it. That is why we require a SIEM and a SOAR solution. So SIEM, like the word says, it is security information and event management. So it is a system which is able to capture or store or analyze information, events from all your sources, right? It can be syslogs, it can be network logs, it can be logs generated by your applications. It can be identity-based logs. It can be user sign-in logs. So these are all the logs that you want to analyze in order to find where the issue is. Or in most of the corporate environment, these are various applications that you'll always find. And typically one of these or one or more of these would be able to give you the insight into how your environment is functioning, right? Are there anonymous access to your applications from an endpoint? Is there a loophole in your firewall which is exploited by one of the endpoints, right? So having a system which is able to ingest these logs and be able, and the same time, the same system also has the ability to provide you a way to give automated response. For example, a simple example can be if a user is accessing, let's say, Outlook from Outlook 2003, right? You ideally do not want him to access, right? So if you detect this access, you ideally want to block the user access, right? Or if you see that a user is trying to reset his password 10 times in the last 2 minutes, right? This is not a normal behavior. So you want to go ahead, put a conditional access or put a multi-factor authentication for that particular user. Or if the user traveled to a different location and he's trying to access, and typically you don't see this type of travel access, you want to enforce a multi-factor. So that is where an automated response comes into play. So it is very important in today's world to have a solution which is able to digest, which is able to understand all these logs, have a system which understands these logs over time. So you need to have a very scalable, highly secure, because the information in the logs are quite sensitive, right? It pretty much gives you information in terms of what is happening in that application. So it is sensitive, it is informative, and it's huge. The amount of logs that get generated are quite massive. So you need a system which is able to scale, which is able to recognize what's happening in the logs and give your security team priority. Yes, the system can identify an issue. If it identifies 50 issues, and if you're dealing with issues which are not of high priority at the very top, then the amount of time you will take to fix the attack will be much more. So the system should also be able to give you a priority, saying that these are the top issues which needs to be fixed first, and then gives you the priority of what needs to be fixed. It also gives you the ability to have automated response over a period of time. If you start seeing the same issues again and again, you can have an automated script, a logic app, any kind of playbook to be written so that that can be triggered by a security agent. So that is why we need a SIEM or a SOAR solution in today's world, where you have applications in cloud, you have users using on-prem, you have hybrid becoming the normal now. This is where a SIEM and a SOAR solution becomes very important and effective. So Microsoft's offering of SIEM and SOAR solution is Azure Sentinel. Azure Sentinel is a cloud native service. So as soon as I say cloud native, you don't have to worry about its scalability. You don't have to worry about its uptime. You don't have to worry about its AI and ML building logic, because a lot of these are already pre-built. So the Azure Sentinel is an intelligent security system that can collect data, it can detect anomalies, it can help you investigate these anomalies and respond in an automated manner. Right? It has all these four buckets which are required by a SIEM and a SOAR solution. And the best part is it's in cloud. So since it's in cloud, deployment is quick. It doesn't take too much time to have it up and running. Since it's a Microsoft product, it integrates very well with other Microsoft products. For example, M365, Defender for endpoints, or even your Windows 10 or Windows 11 can be very tightly integrated with it. Any other Microsoft applications that either are running on-prem or are part of cloud can be very tightly integrated. And Sentinel doesn't stop there. It is not just built for Microsoft product. It can definitely integrate and do all these four activities for other products. And in the upcoming slides, you'll see how we can integrate with things like ServiceNow for your ticketing, how you can get data from your Cisco firewall, for example, right? So it's not a Microsoft-centric product. It's a product that runs on Microsoft Cloud, integrates very well with Microsoft, but also has extensions to other third-party products as well. One of the beauty about Azure Sentinel is it has you could say artificial intelligence built in, right? It uses Microsoft Graph in the backend. Microsoft Graph is the API, or is the solution which Microsoft uses to collect, detect, and respond to anomalies across Microsoft Cloud, which includes Xbox, Hotmail, their websites, Office 365, Dynamics 365, Microsoft 365. So if there is an issue in France, for example, for a specific patch of Windows 10, you can get that insight as part of your system, and Sentinel is able to understand and help you navigate and respond to those issues. So having AI, ML, having a system that's quick and easy to deploy, and integration with Microsoft 365. These are some of the biggest selling points of Azure Sentinel. And Azure Sentinel isn't I would say a tool that was introduced yesterday. It is part of Forrester and Gartner report. It's in lead quadrant. It plays more or less in line with other products like Splunk and Logarithm. But if you have worked on the other products, you would know that these other products take significantly longer time to install, configure. You need high expertise to even manage infrastructure which run on these other products. But in today's session, you'll see Azure Sentinel is quick, easy, simple to deploy, and you can have it up and running, I would say, in a matter of days. A quick insight into the architecture. So Azure Sentinel is the brain, so is where your AI and ML is. But the actual location where your data is stored, that's in log analytics, right? So log analytics, it's the same backend which is used by Azure Defender. It is the same which is used by other security products of Microsoft. So Sentinel also uses the same, you can say, data warehousing solution that Microsoft has, log analytics. So you don't have to worry about building your own database or data warehousing software, or sorry, data warehousing platform to store data. That's already there. So all you need to do is connect your Sentinel to log analytics, where all your logs are being sent to, and Azure Sentinel will start analyzing the logs and help you have a more secure infrastructure. Quickly going through the slides, like I said, Azure Sentinel is an AI ML based solution. So in this graph on the right hand side, you would see that though you may get millions and millions of activities, it will help you refine the activities and give you priority based incidents, right? Which then your team can work and fix those issues, right? If you do not have an ML and AI based engine, then you would basically spend a lot of time looking at logs and activities which are not actually helping you be productive in solving the problem, right? It is very important that though your applications and system generates logs, you are able to detect and look at logs or incidents which actually are causing problems. And that is where Azure Sentinel is very helpful. So how does Azure Sentinel work? The first piece of Azure Sentinel is collection. It has to collect data from various sources. So it can collect from, like I said, Microsoft Cloud, AWS, other cloud providers. It can also collect data from other security solutions as well. Once the data is collected, it stores it in log analytics. And that is where on top of log analytics is where Azure Sentinel uses its inbuilt capabilities, such as behavior learning, such as machine learning. It has abilities where it is able to correlate data between two different sources and produce an information which helps you understand the root cause of where the issue started, which systems is it affected, and how to remediate that as well. In terms of integration, like I said, it already has integration with several third-party tools. In today's session, we'll see how it can be integrated with Teams, right? Which is now becoming a very popular tool, not just for collaboration, but also for support engineers, where they're able to quickly collaborate and respond to security issues. So other tools include ServiceNow. It has a very good community as well. So we look at their GitHub page, where you can see the contributions done by several folks around the world. So core features: collect, detect, investigate, and response, right? So when it comes to collection, Microsoft Azure can collect data from Microsoft, all the Microsoft cloud infrastructure. It can also integrate with on-prem. Now, when it comes to integration with on-prem, there are two options. Some of the popular vendors already have connectors to Azure Sentinel. So for example, F5, Barracuda, Cisco, Sophos, Akamai, these are some of the popular vendors that I'm aware of have connectors to Azure Sentinel. If you have products which do not have connectors, you can always use a data collector or a log collector, which is, you can say, an intermediate system which collects logs from your systems and then pushes that logs into Azure Sentinel, right? Now, for instance, if you have a Linux-based machine, you can definitely use the CEF log collector to collect logs and push data into Sentinel. So think of it as the machine which aggregates or which is able to collect logs from devices and network infrastructure which do not have a direct connected with Sentinel, and then it pushes all these logs into Azure Sentinel. Right? So it has that intermediate connectivity available today. Quickly talking about some of the popular data connectors, and this is more focused around the Microsoft Cloud Stack. So if you see a lot of them, Azure Active Directory, Azure Activity, Office 365, threat protection from Azure and Office 365, Azure Active Directory, identity protection. So these are some of the applications or some of the services which produce logs, and these logs ingestion into Azure Sentinel is free. Azure Active Directory currently is built, but I'll show you an environment where I've been collecting data for one of our partners, and Azure Sentinel seems expensive, but it is actually not expensive, right? For the amount of insights, for the amount of intelligence that it is able to produce, the investment is quite less, right? You can easily have Azure Sentinel implemented for any sized customer, right, who is currently using M365 or even AWS. You can integrate Azure Sentinel with AWS, get their logs, and provide them with a security report and be able to produce more managed services revenue from it. Quickly going through these slides, one of the other aspects of the SIEM solution that Sentinel provides is analytics, right? So when you are connecting to data sources, it also gives you inbuilt analytics. Now there are over 100 pre-built analytics rules that are available. These analytics rules basically help you understand what is happening with the data source that you're connected, right? It helps you correlate between two different applications, such as, let's say, your Exchange and Active Directory, for instance, right? It helps you detect suspicious activities and help you analyze it instead of just looking at rows and columns. It'll give you a more, I would say, understandable data. The other good solution, which is other good feature part of Azure Sentinel, is hunting. Now, hunting is a script that you can run on demand. Analytics rules run on a schedule. Hunting rules can run on demand. For example, if you have written a query that you want to see how many users have used their multi-factor authentication in the last 24 hours, right? That's a script that you can write. Now, scripts are written using a language called KQL, and you can run that query across your environment at any given point of time. Similarly, Microsoft has already pre-written hundreds of these hunting rules, and there are hunting rules specifically written for Microsoft 365. Now, this is where you can take advantage of Azure Sentinel, right? So if I'm sure all the partners on this call already have customers using M365, right? So if you would like to give them a proactive security report every single quarter or every single month, there are already more than 25 queries, hunting queries already pre-built. All you have to do is run these queries, I don't know, once a week, once a month, and give them that report saying this is what we see in your infrastructure, right? It can be things such as multiple teams channel creation, abrupt downloads from SharePoint Online, or lot of files being uploaded from a specific IP into SharePoint, or you see transport rules being created, right? So these are things that a customer has to be aware of, and you can use the pre-built queries, which are already part of Azure Sentinel, to run across their infrastructure, give them a proactive report, and based on that, you can then produce managed services offerings, right? In order to fix those. So Microsoft is definitely investing more and more into building these queries. You can also build queries. There are courses available online, especially in Pluralsight. If I'm not wrong, there's a free course where you can learn about how you can build queries, KQL queries, and have it available, or that can become your own IP, right? Which sets you apart from other resellers. Now, once you have detected an incident, then it is about investigating and responding. Now, so investigation and response is part of Sentinel's SOAR piece, which is security orchestration and automated response. So investigation helps you dig deeper, right? Assign the issue to an engineer, right? Who can then investigate more and come back with a report. Now, the investigation is also where you can start integrating with tools like Teams, right? Where you can quickly create an incident, assign it to a team, or create a team, add users into that team, and start working on a resolution for it, right? Last piece of Azure Sentinel is the log analytics. Log analytics comes into place because of the automation. So let's say if you see a lot of users who are trying to access applications from legacy applications, like let's say Outlook 2010, 2007, or if they're trying to use a browser which is not updated, let's say, for instance, Internet Explorer, right? You would like to have an automated response to those users, either a message or asking them to do a multi-factor authentication, or even blocking the user, for example, right? So these are automation scripts that you can create using Logic Apps. One of the beautiful features of Logic App is it doesn't really require you to code the logic. Most of the logic building functionality is all drag and drop. All you need to do is drag and drop, put in some values for the variables, and then you're able to build a flow which will then start producing automated response whenever it detects a specific incident. So all these 4 to 5 features are part of Azure Sentinel. There's no separate costing for any of this. It's all part of a single solution. After a demo, we'll also jump on the pricing side of Azure Sentinel and hopefully give you a very good understanding of how Azure Sentinel pricing works. So let's jump on to the demo. Let me quickly bring up my Azure workspace. Okay, so I hope everybody is able to see screen sharing. Let me reshare it just to be sure. Okay, so I think now everybody is able to see screen sharing. So I'm logged into my Azure portal, and if you just search for Sentinel, you will reach this place, right? Now, like always, you can go ahead and create an Azure Sentinel. Now, Azure Sentinel, like I said, uses log analytics in the background. So log analytics, if you have created previously, it requires a workspace, right? So we'll go ahead and create a workspace. Also, you see this message, Microsoft Sentinel offers a 31-day free trial. So do remember, Microsoft Sentinel has 2 components. One is the log analytics, one is Microsoft Sentinel, which is the AI and ML engine. You can think of it in that way. So Microsoft is currently offering free credits for 31 days for Azure Sentinel consumption, but you'll still have to pay for the log analytics. But log analytics is not too expensive, right? So it's a very, very good offering from Microsoft where you can test this solution for your customers, implement it. And especially if you have multiple customers, you can use Azure Lighthouse with Azure Sentinel in order to manage multiple customers from a single login. So I'll go ahead and create a log analytics workspace. So I'll quickly select the subscription. I'll just create a new resource group. I'll say Sentinel hands-on lab. Okay. I'll give it a name. I'll say Sentinel hands-on lab, and that's the region. East. Can give some meaningful tags, but for demo purpose, I'll skip it and I'll go ahead and have the log analytics workspace created for it. Now the pricing tier, if you see, I've selected pay as you use. Now there are options to change it. So if you have a large enterprise customer whom you know will send more than, let's say, 100 GB of data into log analytics every single day, then there are options to, you can say, reserve it, right? You can get a more fixed pricing, a more better pricing, but it's for enterprise customers, right? Like I said, if you have customers who push about 100 GB of data per day. So I'll go ahead and create it. It'll just take a couple of minutes. Now, while this is being created, I'll also jump on to another Azure subscription where I already have Sentinel running. So I can show you the end result of its configuration as well. So in that way, you can see how you can create a brand new one and what happens once everything is being configured of it. So while this is getting created, let me log in on the other screen. Okay, this is succeeded. So I'll say click add. So now Azure Sentinel is being added to this log analytics workspace. So like I said, Azure Sentinel is the AI and ML brain of the overall solution. Log analytics is where your data, whenever you push logs from your endpoints or Azure Active Directory, that is where it gets stored. So just logging in on the other screen, just bear with me for a minute. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat and post your questions, and I'll review the questions and hopefully answer them. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my entire screen so that I don't have to switch screens. Okay, so this is another implementation of Azure Sentinel, which was done a couple of months ago. So once Azure Sentinel gets created, this is how it gets displayed. So let me just see. Okay, so I just rolled back to my just created one. So as you see, this is the news and guides section of the Azure Sentinel. It says free trial available during this period, 10 GB per day for free for Azure Sentinel and Log Analytics. So I correct my statement. So it's not just Azure Sentinel that is free, it is Azure Sentinel and Log Analytics that is free, and free is with terms and conditions where it is 10 GB per day. I think for small to medium sized customers, 10 GB per day is quite enough, right? So this is how the brand new Azure Sentinel looks like. So if I click on overview, this is the page where it gives you a summary of your events over time, your recent incidents, data anomalies, potential anomalies across the regions. And you're able to configure or have a bird's eye view of everything that's happening across your infrastructure. Also, you can set the time period. Now, Like we saw during the session, the very first activity that you typically do is collect data, right? So on the left hand side, you have configuration and data connectors, and Microsoft currently has about 120 data connectors, right? And if you see, it's not just Microsoft data connectors they have. They have Akamai, they have AWS, they have Apache, they have Azure, they have data coming from Barracuda, Cisco. So they have several connectors available. Now for connectors, if you want to collect data from a system that Microsoft doesn't have an out-of-the-box connector to, you can always use CEF, common event format. Right? So what we'll do is we'll go and create connector for most famous one, which is Office 365. Yeah, Office 365. Right, so click on Office 365. Now, as you saw previously, data coming from Office 365 into Azure Sentinel is actually free, right? So I'll go ahead. Before I click on Open Connector page, as you can see, this connector will give me 7 workbooks. It gives me 3 queries and 32 rule templates, right? So the connector is not just allowing me to pull data, it is also giving me workbooks. Workbooks are actually, you can say, pre-built dashboards. Queries are your hunting queries, and analytic rules are rules that you run on a periodic basis, right? Which check your infrastructure. So it comes with all these. It gets data from Exchange, Teams, and SharePoint. So these are the 3 things. If you observe, it is not getting data from Azure Active Directory. You have a separate connector for Azure Active Directory, right? It gives you information on when was the last log received. So since it's never been configured, obviously there's no last log received. So if I click on Open Connector page, I can say get data from all these locations, apply changes. If there are any previously connected tenants, it will also show us the results here. That's it. So as simple as that. So collect, it shows you the next steps if you'd like to check the queries, right? So it says Office activity where Office workload is SharePoint or OneDrive. So this will give you any activity that was done on SharePoint or OneDrive or any activity on Exchange. So activity can be creation of a meme, email, creation of a transport rule, password changes on the mailbox and things like this, right? So all these, and these are the templates, rule templates that it has provided, which get added into your log and which get added into your Sentinel workspace. So if I go back to Sentinel, and if now I go back to analytics here, right? So it's being added, right? So all these activities are now being added. So we created one connector. This should say 1. That's good. The second one, which we would ideally like to add, is your Azure Active Directory, right? So Azure Active Directory, again, it gives workbooks, queries, and templates, right? Open and go ahead and enable or go ahead and get all these. Now, of course, for user and sign-in logs, you need to have Premium Plan 1 or Plan 2, right? So if you do not have this permission, I'm sorry, if you do not have this license, then no data of your user sign-in, user risk and sign-in risk logs get into Sentinel or Log Analytics. But what I'll do, I'll just for now check all of these. I don't think I have this license, so I'll not apply it, but this is as easy and simple as to configure Sentinel, right? And you can configure it on pretty much any Microsoft Cloud customer environment, right? If your customer is running Azure workloads like Azure SQL database, Keyword, and Firewall, you can even pull in data from those into into Sentinel, and then be able to provide analytics around it. So since this is a brand new setup, I wouldn't have a lot of data to show in terms of incidents or to show you hunting rules. So if I go to hunting rules, currently there are none. So I'll switch to an environment where there are some logs and we can get some meaningful information. So this is another one of the other you can say environments where we have logs coming in. Last 24 hours, I've had 142.3K, which is a little over a million events being generated, not a lot of incidents. And if I now go to hunting, for instance, it has almost about 161 hunting rules out of 203. Now, one of the best features about Sentinel is I can run all these 161 rules with one click, right? If I click, it'll go ahead and run these rules, which are available, and start throwing results for me. Now, if you go in the market and try to search for a product which does this, you will probably not be able to find a lot of tools which are able to do this, right? There was a question from Rakesh, can we use Jaipur notebooks for Sentinel? Yes, thank you, Robert, for answering that. That's one of the, I would say, good parts about Azure Sentinel. It's not very Microsoft focused. It is very open source as well. The predefined queries are those automatically updated by Microsoft timeframe? Yes, they are. Thank you very much, Robert, again. So like I said, these queries are being run. So for example, I see 4 results on rare Azure, rare audit activity. So this is the query that was run. So this is the KQL query, right? Now, like I said, it's very SQL-like language. But yeah, like I said, if you're not a developer and if you're interested to learn how you can learn, there are several courses available online for it. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and click on view results for that specific one. It'll show me the query and then it displays me the result. Right, so it says these were some of the rare audit activities that happened. There were a couple of managed identity that was created. There was also an Exchange Online group that was updated, and if you see, it says unfamiliar sign-in properties, right? So this is where I can then start investigating more. When did it happen? What was the exact time period? What was the change that was done? And then look into the various details about this particular activity, right? So that is the hunting rules. I would say this is a really good feature. I also encourage my partners to build their own queries or use the queries that are available in the Azure Sentinel GitHub page, right? So if I quickly open the GitHub page, you can always customize it, right? You don't have to build queries from scratch. You can always look at the ones that are already built, customize it according to your requirements. So if I go to the hunting rules, as you can see, you have for S3 buckets, right? If you have customers who have hybrid cloud, we have multiple cloud, you can pull data from multiple resources and have it available within your Azure. Office activities, right? Some of them were already there. These were the ones that you can create. So if your users, if there are multiple team owners, right? If the multiple team sites are being deleted, right? So all these functionalities are available, and these are all free of cost, right? These are all community-based activity. You even have a Proofpoint. One of the products that Ingram sells a lot is Proofpoint. It's an enterprise product which checks your email for security. So again, you can go ahead and integrate Proofpoint into Azure Sentinel. So the amount of customizations that you can do on Azure Sentinel is quite big, quite huge, and it helps you target all your customers, whether it is small or big. So we looked at data collection, we looked at hunting, quickly looking at some of the analytics. So if you look at analytics now, like I said, analytics are added frequently by Microsoft, if you have created data connectors for third-party products, and if they have their own analytics rules, all of them are added here. And if you watch closely, there are some which are actually combination of products. For example, if you see the rule type saying Fusion, this is actually getting data or trying to correlate data from all these various sources. So it is checking Palo Alto Networks, pretty much all Microsoft Azure related or Microsoft security related products, right? So it's a fusion where it is trying to see if you have any multi-stage attack, where the attack started from an endpoint, then it went on to M365, then affected your, let's say, Azure firewall and things like that. So it is able to correlate activities. You have external user added and removed in the short time, right? So this is for Microsoft Teams. So these are activities or analytics rules that are added. Now these run on a frequency, like I said, right? These can be edited, but these run on a schedule. Hunting rules, you can run it on demand, right? Watch list is a very, very interesting feature. I have several customers using watch list, especially for actually they're especially using some of the templates. One of the items, one of the watch lists that they've used a lot is terminated employees. Now, it's common in IT world that employees move from company to company, and a lot of times they move from competitor to competitor, right? So you do not want employees during the notice period to start downloading things, to start sending out emails when they shouldn't be sending out emails to, right? So these are things where you can use these watch lists. Another very important watch list that you can add is VIP use, especially for your break glass admins. When you have an attack and you're logging in with an admin account which has, you can say, pretty much unlimited permissions, you can always use these watch lists, which will capture what that user is doing and is able to help you remediate the situation, right? So watch list is a fairly new feature that was introduced. Definitely, you can create your own, or you can use some of the templates that are available here. Talking about workbooks, because workbooks are added by whenever you add connectors. So if you look at templates, and if I open one of the templates, for example, if I open, say, Office 365 template, yeah. So like I said, template workbooks are basically pre-built dashboards, right? So if I click on view template, it already has all the activities. So let's say if I select all, and if I say user type as, let's say again all, it is able to give me detailed analytics of what is happening within my Office 365 infrastructures, right? So this is available out of the box. You can even create it. One of the functionalities which Microsoft added recently is print. This was a request that even I got from my partners, where they wanted to print and provide this as a physical copy to their customers. Now you can actually go ahead and print this workbook, right? So as you saw, setting up Azure, quick, simple, easy, doesn't take too much time. It has everything that you need in order to build a sophisticated system available within Azure, and I would strongly recommend everybody to go ahead, implement, play around with it. Microsoft is currently offering 31 days for free of cost, so it's very it's strongly encouraged everybody to go ahead and do this. So let me switch back to the slides and cover the remaining topics. Okay, slides are being shared, which is good. The next piece is a quiz question. So quickly talking about data retention. Now, this is again a very common question. We have customers in ranging industries. Some of them are in legal, some of them are in hospitality, some of them are retail, and different industries have different data retention policies. Now, by default, what is the data retention offered by Azure Sentinel? Is it A, B, C, or D? I encourage people to use the chat and provide the answer. Is it 30, 60, 90, or 120 days? Okay, I see a lot of them answering as C. C is the right answer. So Microsoft Azure Sentinel gives a default data retention of 90 days. But having said that, there are industries that require more than 90 days to store your data, right? Uh, Especially, I've come across several legal firms that require up to 7 to 10 years. Insurance-based companies require up to 15 years to store the data. How can you achieve this with Azure Sentinel? One simple method to so one simple way of achieving that is by sending your log data from your log analytics into Azure Blob Storage, right? There's already a very good article around it. I'll send that article in my follow-up email. There's a playbook already written by Microsoft, which will also help you automate it, right? So it is able to understand when the log was generated, how old is it, and then based on your retention policy that you have defined, it will actually push the data into a blob storage. And the Azure blob storage can either be cold or archived. So you have the ability to then further use a cheaper storage and have the data available for a much, much longer time. Last but not the least is pricing, right? So like I said, Azure Sentinel is primarily made about 2 or 3 components: log analytics workspace and your AI and ML engine, right? So let's quickly jump on to the Azure Sentinel pricing page, right? So if I keep scrolling down, like I said, this is the page which gives you all the information for commitment tier. So commitment is, like I said, if you have enterprise customers who want to push more data, you have commitments right from 100 GB, but the one that we are using is using pay as you use, right? So you have all these, and at the end you have pay as you use, which is typically the default option which is selected. And like you see here, you can increase your data retention up to 90 days for free. The Azure Sentinel, if you want to do more than 90, that is when you can push the data into Azure Log Analytics. I'm sorry, Azure Blob Storage. If you go into the workspace settings and if you quickly want to see the costing, so this is for the customer to whom we have set up, as you can see, for the amount of data that it gets, which is about 100,000, I'm sorry, 100,000 lots, a little more than 100,000 lots per day, which it is able to analyze and get the data. As you can see, it's very, very less. The data ingestion is about $5. Retention is about 21 cents. So it's almost nothing, you could say, right? And for this, you can do analytics on the data, you can do hunting on the data, you can run queries on your data, you can do threat management on the data. So the amount of information that you're able to expose from Sentinel is absolutely huge when you compare the cost. At the same time, if you still want to put a daily cap, you can always put a daily cap here. You can say on and put a daily cap of how much data you would like to get into Azure, so that you do not get charged unexpectedly. Okay. So that pretty much brings me to the end of today's session. Now, before we end the session, I would quickly want to let all the partners know that Ingram Micro is offering funded proof of concept. So if you have customers who would like to try and test Azure, I'm not specifically talking about Sentinel, but Azure in general. But if you have customers who want to try and test Sentinel, feel free to get in touch with Ingram Micro. You might be eligible for almost $500 to $1,000 of funding, where we will give you the Azure credits. You can go ahead, build the. We'll work with you to build the infrastructure, do the POC, hopefully convince your customer to use the solution on Azure, and then help you move the customer from on-prem to cloud. Right? So if you have any customer opportunities on Azure, feel free to get in touch with Ingram Micro team, and we'll be more than happy to support you. Now is the time for questions. Let me quickly jump to questions and see if there are any questions. How do I get the recording? Once the session is completed, you'll receive a recording link from our marketing team on an email. Thank you, Robert, for answering all the questions. You have been very helpful. Thank you very much. So I don't see any other questions popping up. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking your time and joining in today's session. Hope the session was helpful and informative. Is the free POC available for ANZ region only? Nikhil, the answer is yes. It's only for ANZ. Thank you. Thank you all. Have a great weekend ahead. Thank you very much.